The primary mission of the 01 Bird Dog is visual reconnaissance. In this training exercise, we will see how, in the course of fulfilling this primary mission, the Bird Dog aviator develops many immediate targets. When he locates one, the pilot contacts the strike aircraft and marks the target so they can accurately identify it. After marking it, the pilot radios adjustments as required to ensure that the strike aircraft neutralize or destroy the target. In other words, the strike aircraft do the shooting, but it's the Bird Dog aviator who calls the shots. This aviator is about to begin a recon mission. He's going target hunting. Let's see what he does when he finds one. His job begins when he hears a call from a friendly patrol trying to reach any bird dog within the vicinity.
Bird Dog, this is Twisty Scalps, over.
Twisty Scalps, this is Seahorse 2-3, go ahead.
As expected, he receives a request from the friendlies.
Seahorse 2-3, this is Twisty Scalps. We have heavy contact with an estimated platoon located at coordinates Zulu, Tango 225. We are about 400 meters east of that location. Can you give us any assistance? Over.
Twisty Scalps, this is Seahorse 2-3, stand by.
Upon consulting a tactical map, the pilot turns his bird dog toward the friendly position. At the same time, the friendlies identify their position with a smoke grenade in a place where it can easily be seen from the air. The pilot checks the terrain below and sights the brightly colored smoke. He then advises the friendlies that he has their position in sight.
Twisty Scalps, this is Seahorse 2-3, have your yellow smoke, stand by.
The pilot then contacts his controlling agency.
Arabian Horse 3-2, this is Seahorse 2-3. Twisty Scalps is in heavy contact with an estimated enemy platoon located coordinates Zulu Tango 225. Can you give me armed helicopters, over?
Seahorse 2-3, this is Arabian Horse 3-2, stand by.
Sir, Seahorse 2-3 has just requested armed helicopter assistance. Can we give him any?
The controlling agency now contacts the commander of a helicopter flight.
Contact Spark Gap 68 Papa.
Spark Gap 68 Papa.
This is Arabian Horse 3-2, over.
Arabian Horse 3-2, this is Spark Gap 68 Papa, go ahead.
Spark Gap 68 Papa. Seahorse 2-3 reports contact with an enemy platoon.
At coordinates Zulu Tango 225. Request you to proceed to that area, over.
This is Spark Gap 68 Papa, Wilco.
The controlling agency now assigns a frequency to the helicopter commander.
Spark Gap 68 Papa. This is Arabian Horse 3-2.
Seahorse 2-3 will contact you on frequency I, Shackle, Papa, Alpha, Mike, Bravo, over.
This is Spark Gap 68 Papa, roger.
The controlling agency next contacts the Bird Dog aviator again and gives him the information he needs to contact his strike aircraft.
Seahorse 2-3, this is Arabian Horse 3-2. Contact Spark Gap 6-8 Papa on frequency. I shackle, Papa, Alpha, Mike, Bravo. Over.
Now the aviator can contact the helicopter flight.
Spark Gap 6-8 Papa, this is Seahorse 2-3, over.
Seahorse 2-3, this is Spark Gap 6-8 Papa. Go ahead.
This is Seahorse 2-3. My target is an enemy platoon in a north-south wood line located at coordinates Zulu Tango 225-225. The friendlies are located approximately 400 meters east of the target. Your attack heading is 360 degrees. Your brake is to the left. I will hold in orbit over the target at 2,500 feet. Mark will be smoke rocket. Warning, possible intense small arms and automatic weapons fire vicinity of the target area. Say your present location, over.
This is Spark Gap 6-8 Papa. Roger your target data. Now approximately 3 miles south of checkpoint 8.
This is Seahorse 2-3. Roger, I have you in sight. I am at your 12 o'clock level. Over.
This is Spark Gap 6-8 Papa. Roger. Have you in sight. You are cleared to mark at your discretion.
This is Seahorse 2-3. Mark will be in 10 seconds.
This is Spark Gap 6-8 Papa. Roger.
Now that the pilot has confirmed that the strike aircraft have him in sight, he places himself at an absolute altitude of 2,500 feet and makes his turn to the base leg. At this point, he begins arming procedures. Let's go over that again in greater detail. Before delivery, the pilot places his aircraft at an altitude of approximately 2,500 feet and makes the turn to base leg. He positions himself at a point so that the target is about 90 degrees left or right from his aircraft. At the same time, he will also have placed the target 45 degrees down from his flight path. While on base leg, the pilot will carry out procedures required for selection and arming of the particular rocket he plans to fire. He begins by removing the safety pin from the trigger, then arming the overhead rocket switch. First, he opens the guard cover. Then he flips the arming switch. The tube is now armed. At the roll-in point, he reduces power, decreasing airspeed to about 70 knots, and rolls toward the target using rudder and aileron to maneuver the aircraft in a coordinated diving turn toward the attack heading. This is how the full pattern appears prior to releasing the rocket. To avoid a skid, he centers the ball on his turn and bank indicator. And when he reaches the release altitude of approximately 1,800 feet, he pulls the trigger switch. Even as the rocket flashes toward the target, he alerts the helicopter flight commander.
This is Seahorse 2-3. Mark.
Just a minute. We're going too fast. Let's back up a little. We've got some important points to cover first. First, an important rule. The aviator must always keep in mind the safety of the friendlies on the ground. The beaten zone is elliptical. That is, the beaten zone is longer than it is wide because of the dive angle. The steeper the dive angle, the more concentric the beaten zone. Since the probability of error is greater for range than for deflection, and due to the elongated beaten zone, the preferred safest attack is parallel to the friendlies. If the aircraft is out of trim at rocket launch, a relative wind will be created that will be other than the launch axis of the rocket. This relative wind will act on the larger surface area of the fins and cause the rocket to weather vane into the relative wind, thereby causing an error in deflection. Crosswind effect will cause the rocket to drift downwind, an amount dependent upon the velocity of the wind and the time of flight of the rocket. Therefore, the pilot positions his aircraft upwind of the target so that the wind will drift the rocket back to the intended point of impact. An attack against the wind results in a slower ground speed, allowing time to align the aircraft. To obtain greater accuracy, it is desirable to attack against or with the wind, so no compensation for drift is required. Also, during his brake, the wind helps to move the aircraft away from the target and any enemy ground fire that might be received from that location. On occasions, when the tactical situation dictates a crosswind attack, the aviator should compensate for the drift by aligning his aircraft 2 feet upwind of the target for each knot of wind speed. All right, now let's go back and start from where we left off. Using an attack dive angle of about 45 degrees, the pilot has released his rocket at 1,800 feet. Now he initiates a climbing turn to the right or left. About halfway through the turn, he rolls his aircraft back toward the target to check the strike of his rocket. He now stays in an orbit, positioning himself so he can control the helicopters, yet not interfere with their firing passes. Upon making his observation, he contacts the helicopter flight commander.
This is Seahorse 23 from my smoke hit 50 meters south.
This is Sparkcap 68 Papa. Roger. Understand hit 50 meters south of your smoke. Sparkcap 68 Papa rolling in hot now.
Roger, cleared in hot.
Cleared to strike, the lead helicopter begins his firing pass. From his orbit position, the aviator observes the hit, then contacts the friendlies in the field.
Twisty Scalps, this is Seahorse 23. How did that look from your position? Over.
Seahorse 23, this is Twisty Scalps. That was right on target. Suggest that you work a little further back into the wood line. Over.
This is Seahorse 23. Roger, break.
He contacts the helicopters.
Sparkcap 68 Papa. Place your next rockets 50 meters west of your first.
This is Sparkcap 68 Papa. Roger. Rolling in hot.
Probably there would be successive passes, and the Bird Dog pilot would give adjustments for each helicopter. Assuming, however, that the strike is completed, he would again call the helicopter commander.
Sparkcap 68 Papa. This is Seahorse 23. Hold high and dry. Stand by for damage assessment.
This is Sparkcap 68 Papa. Roger. Holding high and dry.
As a low pass is made for the damage assessment, he calls the friendlies on the ground.
Twisty Scalps, this is Seahorse 23. What is your situation now? Over.
2-3, this is Twisty Scalp. The enemy has broken contact and is moving westward. We are starting to move into the target area. Over.
This is Seahorse 23. Roger, stand by.
After completing the low pass over the target area, he reports the results to the strike aircraft.
Sparkcap 68 Papa. This is Seahorse 23. Good coverage. I have an estimated 15 bodies. The remainder are dispersed and are moving into the wood line. The friendlies are now moving into the target area. I'll try to pass a more accurate body count as soon as the target area has been searched. Thank you very much for your assistance. This is Seahorse 23, out.
What you have just seen is one type of mission. Naturally, situations vary from target to target. But there is one thing that never varies: the disarming or unloading that occurs when the aviator returns to his base. After landing, the aircraft proceeds to the loading ramp, where, as always, it is pointed away from the friendly areas. After shutdown, the crew chief grounds the aircraft by connecting a wire from the strut to a grounding stake. Now the crew chief checks to make certain all arming switches are safe and that the trigger safety pin is in position. Then, moving to the side of the tubes, he safeties them by rotating each electrical contact out of position. When unloading or loading rockets, protective equipment should be worn, and the loader must not stand behind the tubes. This aircraft is now disarmed. The rockets may safely be removed and returned to the ready area. Then the crew chief must clean any tubes that have been fired. An oily rag on the end of a long stick accomplishes this task. Meanwhile, nearby, another bird dog is being prepared for the next mission. The master switch, Grimes light, radios, navigation lights, and all rocket arming switches are turned on, except for the trigger switch. Then, with a voltmeter, the crew chief makes a stray voltage check of the contacts on the rocket tubes, so that stray voltage cannot fire the rockets prematurely. Now, certain that there is no stray voltage, all switches are turned off and the loading begins. At least a day's supply of ready ordnance is stored reasonably close by. Ammunition stored in the open must be raised on dunnage at least 6 inches from the ground so that it does not rest on wet soil. In addition, it is covered by a double thickness of tarpaulin, leaving enough space for circulation of air. Ammunition must not be stored where temperatures may exceed minus 60 degrees to plus 150 degrees Fahrenheit. To ensure protection from humidity, moisture-resistant seals are never broken until the ammunition is to be employed. As a further precaution, when rocket motors have warheads attached to them, they are stored with the warheads pointed toward the safest area. Prior to loading, the crew chief must choose the particular color of smoke needed for the next mission. In addition, he must determine that each rocket warhead is firmly attached to its motor. If any rocket's warhead is loose, he would reject it and tighten it later with a torque wrench. If any rockets are dropped during handling, they should be rejected. In a quick turnaround situation, the pilot might already be in the aircraft during loading, but he must be very careful not to touch any switches. An accidental firing could result. Again, remember that while inserting or unloading rockets, the loader must not stand behind the tubes. After the rockets have been loaded, the crew chief stands well to the side of the aircraft and checks the front and rear areas to make certain they are clear. At this time, the pilot grasps the diagonal bars above the instrument panel. This is a signal to the crew chief that now it is safe to rotate the electrical firing contact of each tube back to the contact position and to remove the ground connection before starting the engine. Now the crew chief again stands clear of the aircraft and gives the thumbs up signal. The crew chief has done his job. Now it's up to the pilot to do his. Once again, an enemy position will be tipped off by an expert, the bird dog aviator, who calls the shots as he sees them.
Forward air controllers are positioned with Army brigade and battalion maneuver elements to advise ground commanders on close air support capabilities and to control airstrikes from the air and from the ground. The forward air controller, FAC, is an indispensable part of tactical air power in support of ground forces. Never before has the capability of the FAC been more exploited, or has any phase of combat operations proved more effective and necessary. FACs are experienced fighter pilots who know tactical reconnaissance and airlift capabilities. As members of battalion and brigade tactical air control parties, the FAC knows Army capabilities and is familiar with the ground scheme of maneuver. When airborne, the FAC is always in radio contact with ground elements and ready to control airstrikes requested by the Army. The Army needs an expert in tactical air firepower to advise ground force commanders on close air support capabilities and to recommend the appropriate ordnance load of bombs, rockets, guns, and other weapons for specific targets. The majority of tactical air support used by the Army is pre-planned. The FAC's assistance is needed to determine the air support requirements for both the pre-planned and immediate requests. Upon Army request, the FAC transmits immediate requirements for close air support, reconnaissance, and tactical airlift to the Direct Air Support Center, or DASC. The Army calls on the FAC to control close air support strikes from ground or air observation posts. To accomplish this, he must maintain contact with strike pilots and fire support coordinators of the Army. When does the Army use close air support? Against targets that are beyond the range of organic surface fire, or when targets are inaccessible, beyond artillery range, or when added firepower and ordnance delivery by tactical aircraft is necessary to achieve decisive results. How does the Army acquire close air support? Battalion commanders request immediate close air support, and the FAC, who also functions as the Battalion Air Liaison Officer, or ALO, transmits the request to the desk.